Welcome back. Let's continue from our last video. The evening quickly arrived and nocturnal animals gradually emerged to hunt. Below, Leo was still diligently tending the fire beneath the wooden post where Chelsea was tied. By now, she was covered in a chaotic sweat and she half opened her eyes with an annoyed grunt. Suddenly, a gust of wind blew, scattering sparks. To avoid them, Chelsea tried to pull back but realized she was bound. Seeing the flames rising higher, she panicked and exclaimed, asking what this was. Leo, adding more firewood, asked if she would cooperate with him. Chelsea stubbornly gritted her teeth and refused, angrily yelling that she didn't need anyone but her brother and her wind sickle. But when she tried to summon her weapon, she found she couldn't. A small magic circle was appearing on her wrist and she was bewildered, realizing that Leo had anticipated this and prepared thoroughly. Leo tugged on the rope in his hand and explained that it was a mana-restricting skill, thinking to himself that he didn't have much mana so it couldn't last long. Leo coldly jerked the rope and continued, questioning if she thought he would let her concentrate like that. Then, Leo acted mysteriously, seeing the rope about to be untied. Chelsea panicked and screamed for him to wait and stop, saying it was too hot. The high flames caught the hem of her dress. Taking advantage of this, Leo quickly probed if she would cooperate and he would stop. This time, Chelsea obediently replied that she would. Seeing that she had agreed, Leo still did not untie her. He calmly stated that she needed to swear on her family's name. Chelsea responded that she swore. Chelsea seemed truly terrified and she cried as she swore on the name of the Llewellyn family that she would cooperate. Seeing this, Leo cheerfully loosened the rope, thinking to himself that kids were so easy to manipulate. After the rope was loosened, Chelsea fell from the wooden post. At this point, Leo slowly stood up. He quickly caught Chelsea gently, and when she opened her eyes, she heard his voice, stating that it was a pleasure to meet her. Once again, the scene shifted back to the hall of the lecture room. Most of the students and teachers were intently watching the screen in front of them to see how this year's students would perform. Professor Albee was also focused on the students. On the screen, two students were fighting each other, seemingly very enthusiastically. Albee thought to himself that none of them were up to par, considering their choice to fight each other foolishly. The screen seemed to switch to other students. Albee frowned and thought that only two of them were getting straight to the point. Albee looked at the screen, thinking of the names of the two people, Celia Zerdinger and Abad Llewellyn. In the wilderness, they were cooperating to kill a monster, and it seemed this was what Albee wanted. Albee was highly impressed with the two, thinking that the future of the Republic would be bright. At this moment, the screen switched to Chelsea and Leo, who were also cooperating to fight a monster. Albee seemed interested in this and grunted in acknowledgement. Looking at Leo's cold and serious face, he thought of his name, Leo Plov. Then, thinking about the scene where he used fire to threaten Chelsea, he mused that the fire trick was childish, but getting Chelsea Llewellyn to cooperate would ensure a passing score, noting that their power was the same as Celia and Abad. But looking at Leo's face, which showed no panic or fear, Albee exclaimed that he was a surprising dark horse. Meanwhile, in the wilderness, Chelsea's arrow pierced through the monster's body. Following that, Leo jumped up and swung his sword, slicing off the monster's head. After dealing with the monster, Leo landed softly on the ground. Chelsea, standing beside him, remarked that being with a knight really made things much easier. Then, she turned to Leo and asked what kind of aura he used, as she couldn't sense any mana from it. Leo honestly replied that he didn't know how to use aura. As if hearing a joke, Chelsea laughed and asked how he could not have an aura. Leo also honestly explained that like everything else, the foundation was important. At this moment, another monster was lurking behind them. Leo continued, asking what the foundation of wind magic was. By now, Chelsea had noticed something was amiss. Her eyes flashed and she glanced slightly behind her. Chelsea swung her hand, sending a wind sickle towards the monster hiding in the distance by the tree. When she confirmed that the monster had died, with blood flowing from its body, she lowered her hand. After one move that killed the monster, she proudly boasted, mentioning talking about wind magic in front of a Llewellyn and calling him audacious. But Leo didn't seem to care much about those words. He moved forward and stated that she had power, he admitted, but she used it wrong. Chelsea, behind him, angrily yelled his name. But before she could finish, Leo raised his hand, signaling her to stop. Leo slowly walked towards the monster that had just been killed. Chelsea followed. When she saw the slimy thing Leo was holding, she asked, confused, what it was like. Leo explained that he had been through similar things before, thinking to himself that now he understood the condition to pass this exam. But just as he could figure out a way to complete the exam, something was approaching, and he opened his red eyes to look at it. Leo quickly and nimbly grabbed Chelsea, who was standing beside him, and leaped away from the sudden and unidentified attack. At this moment, a familiar voice rang out, stating that they almost got her and that they needed to take down Chelsea Llewellyn first. As Leo pulled Chelsea back, they both looked up to see who was attacking. Rapid footsteps were approaching. Gullivan spoke with a disdainful tone, sneering provocatively at Leo and dismissing him as nothing. His eyes filled with disregard. Then, Gullivan commanded the other students to attack together. Leo, now standing, clenched his fist, looking at Gullivan and the other students rushing towards him. His eyes flashed with a powerful light, yet they were filled with cold detachment. He quickly threw a punch, knocking down the white-haired student who was rushing towards Chelsea. One punch was all it took to defeat the student, and Gullivan's face was filled with panic. He hadn't expected that someone inferior to him could so easily defeat a student. Before engaging in battle, Leo instructed Chelsea to watch his back. Still not recovered from the previous attack, she replied with a trembling voice, agreeing. Gullivan, realizing that his team was in trouble, shouted orders asking what they were waiting for. At this moment, Chelsea unsheathed her wind sickle while Leo was ready to fight at any moment. Leo coldly glanced at them, appearing very excited. After a while, it seemed the fight wasn't going well, and now Gullivan was frantically running away from Leo. Looking at the endless forest ahead, he thought in fear that he couldn't end up like this. He gritted his teeth and sprinted ahead, thinking he just needed to find another group. On the other side, when Celia saw a familiar figure running past, she thought she recognized him but couldn't remember where she had seen him. She turned to Abad and suggested they go that way. The two went forward, suddenly stopping, their expressions identical, completely stunned. In front of them were Leo and Chelsea with a few monsters and a group of students lying scattered on the ground. When Chelsea saw Abad, her eyes lit up and she called out his name, rushing to hug him tightly. He stroked her head and reassured her that she was safe. Celia asked suspiciously why the two of them were together. Leo rubbed his hair and sighed before explaining that he had suggested a partnership. Celia replied, confused, that she never thought that stubborn girl would agree. Leo smiled mischievously and said that he had persuaded her. Sensing something was suspicious, Celia stepped closer and asked what he had done. Leo did not answer but instead went to a student lying on the ground who was now getting up. He told him to go. Chelsea exclaimed in surprise, asking why he was helping them. The student who was helped up rushed to his companion, asking if he was all right. It was at this moment that Leo spoke, stating that they didn't have to fight each other anymore and should work together to fight this world. Everyone was shocked and confused, asking what he meant by fighting this world. Leo then explained that there was a change in the wilderness, asking if they had seen these corpses, pointing to the monsters behind them, which Abad and Celia finally noticed. Leo walked to one of the monsters, the blood from which was now evaporating from the ground, as if their moisture had been completely drained. Then he turned to the other three and asked where all the other monsters had gone. As soon as he finished speaking, Celia realized, surprised and praising him for being right. Leo continued to explain that it was as if they were all scared of something, that a high-level monster had appeared and scared them off. At this point, the other three seemed to understand. Abad stated that he understood that the hero's battle Albi had set was to defeat the high-level monster. As soon as he finished speaking, a thunderous sound echoed from behind them. A mystical light appeared along with the silhouette of something moving. A dark power was engulfing everyone. Everyone was panicking and worried except for Leo, who was the calmest of them all, stating that it had finally revealed itself. The scene shifted and Gullivan found himself wandering alone in the deep forest. The darkness was so profound that he had to switch on his light. Little did he know danger was drawing near. Gullivan felt determined and internally vowed to make Leo fail, no matter what it took. After walking a short distance, he suddenly stopped, noticing something on the ground. As he bent down for a closer look, he cried out in horror at what he saw. In that moment, the light from his lamp was extinguished by a slimy substance. His yellow eyes spun around, and slimy saliva appeared on his face. Facing him was a monstrous spider with a huge mouth wide open, appearing ready to devour him. The scene then transitioned to the academy, where some students had already returned. A screen displayed the conversation of Leo's group. Albi watched intently to see how they would handle the situation below. Nearby, a student with reddish-brown hair boasted about taking down 15, maybe 16 of them. Another student quickly countered, claiming to have gotten about the same number. Professor Albi looked down, counting the students who had been transferred back to the academy hall, and stated that currently there were about 500 and all of them had failed. Just then, another teacher rushed onto the platform, frantically whispering to Professor Albi that even so, he had to choose 100 people like other areas, yet in the exam there were only 50 students left. Professor Albi adjusted his glasses, his decision unwavering, and replied that if they didn't meet his standards, he was prepared to fail them all. Headmaster Kellyan, knowing this, had entrusted him with the responsibility. He glanced back at the scene of Leo helping the other students up, thinking that a true hero could only be found in times of difficulty. He narrowed his eyes to get a clearer view of Leo, certain that Leo Plav had discovered the anomaly in the forest. On the screen, the scene of Leo helping up a female student he and Chelsea had knocked down earlier was playing. Albie wondered if Leo could truly defeat this world. In the wilderness, the remaining students were running together towards a source of strange light. A student with purple hair complained about the darkness as they ran. Meanwhile, Celia, running ahead, suddenly stopped and pointed her sword at something ahead, telling everyone to be ready. Her sword touched the air, and a small red dot appeared at the tip, surrounded by swirling red energy. When the light illuminated the scene, Galivan was visible, half his body already inside the monster's mouth. Celia exclaimed in horror, realizing that the one behind was the real threat. Abad's expression mirrored Celia's. Regaining his composure, he drew his weapon and aimed at the monster, yelling a command for wind. However, before he could finish his move, Leo stopped him. He looked at the scene and said coldly for Gulivano to wake up and break the crystal. Hearing the familiar voice, Gullivan, who had been swallowed, managed to open his eyes and rasped Leo's name. Realizing the truth in Leo's words, he gave up his struggle and crushed the crystal in his hand. A beam of light shot out of the monster's mouth and slowly disappeared as everyone watched intently. This time, no one stopped him as Abad raised his staff again and released Windfang. He aimed his staff at the monster, causing small explosions around it, making the monster bleed and cry out. The wounds Abad inflicted quickly healed, leading him to think that it wasn't enough. The other three students watched the scene with their mouths agape, except for Leo, who remained calm, observing the spider monster lunging towards them. Leo studied the pattern on its body and confirmed that it was indeed a spider princess Tarantula. On the other side, the purple-haired student jumped up and swung his weapon at Tarantula, determined to strike it. But before his weapon could make contact, one of the spider's legs swept across his body, and the student cried out in pain as he was flung mercilessly to the ground. Seeing this, Celia declared she would end it with one blow. She placed a crystal on the tip of her sword and unleashed prominence. Celia's attack created a large hole in its head, and the monster seemed enraged as it let out a scream, but the wound quickly healed as if nothing had happened. Tarantula bared its sharp fangs and roared at everyone. Seeing her attack was ineffective, Celia exclaimed in disbelief. As she spoke, Abad was being suspended in the air by the wind, holding his staff, and stated that the attacking power of a knight and a mage was as different as day and night. Abad waved his hand, unleashing a tornado. Winds from all directions gathered in one place, and the other students had to hold onto something to avoid being blown away. The winds, like sharp blades, cut into the spider monster, causing blood to spray out continuously. However, when the tornado stopped, Abad's face was stunned as he stared at the monster in disbelief. Immediately, darkness engulfed him, and Abad's eyes reflected fear as the spider monster lunged toward him. Below, Chelsea drew her wind sickle, looking worriedly at her brother and calling out his name. Above, Abad had been injured on his arm by the spider's leg. Luckily, Chelsea's attack caused the monster to retract its leg. Abad fell to the ground and Chelsea rushed to help her brother, asking if he was all right. Abad replied that he was fine and thanked her. Chelsea sat by a tree while the purple-haired student watched the scene in fear, exclaiming about what kind of monster it was. Everyone was in a state of panic and worry, with someone commenting on its terrifying regeneration. As the spider monster approached menacingly, they could not think of a way to deal with it. At this moment, Leo, who had been quiet until now and had not rushed to fight the monster, stated that it was the daughter of Salatna, the queen of Tartaros, a monster from the Erebos army that raised the elf forest. Upon hearing the name, they all thought of the same terrifying place, Tartaros. It was then that Leo thought about Albi's left-eye magic being indeed the magic of the Spirit King. He recalled that in his past life, Tarantula was the disaster that caused the wilderness to become a ruin. It had destroyed the Spirit Tribe's forest, and the right hand of the Spirit King had fought against it. He had thought Luna had already destroyed Tarantula. Looking at the monster again, he realized that it seemed the Spirit King's right hand saved it, or more accurately, it was the infinite life energy within that hand which was the Ring of Life. Hearing this, Abad pointed his staff and declared that if this monster was the key to solving the test, he would defeat it. Celia quickly interrupted, and both of them charged at the monster simultaneously. Collisions and explosions reverberated off the monster's body as it let out several cries. It was then that Leo said it would continue to regenerate until they both ran out of mana. Hearing this, Abad and Celia turned to look at the spider monster, which was regenerating as if it hadn't been hurt at all. Celia quickly turned and asked Leo for his suggestion. Leo replied that they needed to cooperate. Hearing the word cooperate, Abad refused without even listening to the plan, stating that he would be the one to score the highest. Celia was not to be outdone and turned to him, saying that no, it would be her. However, Leo remained calm amidst their rivalry and explained that if they could not conquer the hero's world, then they would all fail. Thinking about failure, neither Celia nor Abad wanted that to happen, so they both fell silent. Abad, still breathing heavily from his previous injury, asked that even if they cooperated, they would need time to form an attack strong enough to kill it instantly, and only the two of them could hold it off long enough. Celia fell silent after hearing this. Behind Leo, Chelsea was staring at him intently, as if deep in thought. Leo, seeing that everyone was discussing without reaching a decision, confidently nominated himself, saying to leave it to him. Hearing this, Celia exclaimed in shock, questioning if that was suicide and pointing out that he couldn't even use aura. Leo stepped forward and replied that he knew he could only stall for 5 minutes. Abad expressed doubt about what would happen if the attack failed, but Leo turned to him with a confident smile. He bent down and picked up an axe that had been abandoned on the ground and casually responded that he didn't think that would happen. Standing in the bright moonlight, Leo stated that wind and fire had always been good friends and were always harmonious together. Seeing this, both Abad and Celia turned to assess each other. Meanwhile, Leo looked at the spider monster lunging towards him and smirked mockingly. He suddenly smiled and said that this reminded him of the old days. Leo gripped the axe and prepared to fight the monster. He swung the axe at the spider monster, and his blue energy swept across it, causing several of its legs to break. Amid the commotion, Leo said to the monster that it had been a long time. Below, Celia and Abad were stunned by what they saw, not expecting him to be so strong. Above, Leo quickly launched another attack at the monster, leaving it no time to react, and its head was caved in again. Leo glowed, and with a smirk he announced, "Monster of Tartaros." That's a wrap. The story continues in my next video. Like and subscribe to stay notified.